Never before have our major parties been out
Australians to vote for the United Australia Party.
Help United Australia Party set Australia free.
In this coming election,
stop the lockdowns. Time for a change.
This is the last chance.
We want freedom, freedom, freedom.
You can't miss it. Saturation advertising from a political party that opinion polls suggest may not even pick up a single seat.
The billboards have only just started to roll out, and we'll have TV, we'll have radio, we'll have newspaper, we'll have social media.
You'll have a feeling you won't be able to escape anymore, unlike 2019 where it wasn't so noticeable. They're going to be worse on digital and social media because that's where more of us are.
The United Australia Party, bankrolled and effectively controlled by businessman Clive Palmer, broke election spending records in 2019. And this time around, Mr Palmer is promising to at least match or spend even more.
Well, I think the sheer amount of money we're talking about here, which I think has been correctly labelled as obscene, really flouts the democratic process altogether.
I completely disagree with that conclusion. We need to actually spend that amount of money to give ourselves at least an opportunity to have our case heard.
They even use surveillance technology to stop people from taking too much toilet
So
paper.
what is the United Australia Party trying to achieve? At the National Press Club today, Clive Palmer outlined his unorthodox economic vision, proposing to take monetary policy away from the Independent Reserve Bank and forcing banks to cap housing interest rates at 3% over the next 5 years.
This is an emergency that we face in this country like any other. In times of war, hardship and the Depression, the government has had to act.
The Queensland businessman denied his political spending spree had anything to do with promoting his own interests.
I just don't think anything I do in politics is about business because it only costs money, it doesn't generate money. It's really about, being able to provide other alternatives for Australians, what we do.
This pitch, as being a real alternative to Labor and the Coalition, attracted retiree Simon Flitcroft to the United Australia Party 3 years ago. After a cold call from a party organiser, he decided to stand as a candidate.
Since we've been talking about dissatisfaction with the two major parties, it was almost like the universe was supplying a potential response.
But the party wasn't what he expected. The candidate for the Brisbane seat of Bonner was disappointed when, after the election, Clive Palmer declared his ultimate aim was to keep Labor out of office.
We were being used as effectively pawns to prop up the LNP. If I thought that I was going out there effectively representing the LNP, I would have wasted my time.
The United Australia Party's only MP is former Liberal backbencher Craig Kelly, who insists his new party is strictly independent. How can we believe the party that it's not really just trying to prop up the LNP, given what Clive Palmer said back in 2019?
Well, we can see that by what we've already said about our preferences, firstly in the Senate, where we have said very clearly that we will not be preferencing the Liberal Party, or the Labor Party for that matter, at all.
When it comes to lower house preferences, Mr Palmer was giving little away at the National Press Club.
From my personal perspective, I think I'd put the Greens ahead of Liberal and Labor. That's my personal perspective, because they haven't been in government and they haven't been responsible for this debt.
The party this time around is focusing more on libertarian causes, resisting and criticising COVID public health measures that require vaccinations in many workplaces.
When we have governments that adopt vaccine passports, we are no longer free.
Are you seriously saying we don't have freedom here in Australia, or is this a bit of political hyperbole?
Absolutely. I have people talk to me every day that have been thrown out of their jobs, that have been sacked and dismissed from their jobs or stood down because they don't want to go a medical intervention.
What do you think of that shift?
I think it's nothing more than a sly little ploy to gain votes. It's too late. The mandates are in place. They have been legislated. He's bark up the wall.
Our freedom
A narrowing of focus might not necessarily mean fewer votes. The party's attempt to ally itself with small, scattered but highly motivated fringe groups could help spread the message.
And you think, hang on, hundreds of people won't change the outcome of an election. Well, yes, it will, if it's amplified enough and done with enough groups out there, and the content's targeted specifically at those people.
Last election, the party picked up just under 3.5% of the primary vote and failed to win a seat. But that doesn't mean it's without influence. The party's enormous advertising spend could make it more difficult for government opponents to cut through.
It's very hard for Labor to get space. How do you then obtain space in the media market, the TV networks, the radio networks, the newspaper networks, and even the online networks when you're competing against Clive Palmer?
Clive Palmer's second consecutive record-breaking campaign has prompted calls for federal electoral donor and spending caps.
He's perfectly entitled to do what he likes to do with his own money, and what he's doing, let's be quite clear, is not illegal, and that's because there are no limits on campaign spending and limits on donations. But no man is entitled really to obstruct the democratic process and the proper electoral process, and we should have laws that fetter him from doing so.
Clive Palmer argues his larger-than-life presence in the election campaign is a sign of a healthy democracy.
Democracy means diversity of ideas, and that people have got a right to come forward and say what they think. What matters not is how much money you spend, it's what your solutions are.
The United Australia Party invited Simon Flitcroft to stand again this year. He declined, choosing to spend more time tinkering with his classic cars. You were naive to join the United Australia Party?
I think for somebody to step into a non-major party, there's either got to be passion or naivety, or maybe a little bit of both.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.